Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Mike. I'm the Stakeholder Engagement Manager at Solent University. On behalf of Solent and Portsmouth Universities, I'd like to welcome you to today's session, which forms part of our Winning in the Solent Region series of events. The two universities, both of which business schools are accredited through the Small Business Charter, have been working collaboratively alongside our partners, including the Hampshire Chamber of Commerce, to support businesses throughout the pandemic. We're delighted to once again be working together to deliver this webinar, utilising one another's skills and resources to support the business community. We'd like to thank everyone for their involvement with this. Before we get underway, just a couple of housekeeping elements. Please keep your microphone on mute throughout. If you'd like to ask a question, please use the chat function, which is available at the bottom of your screen. Once our guest speakers have spoken, we'll go into a Q&A and open discussion. Please note this session is being recorded and the recording will be shared and available on the university's website afterwards. And we would please ask if you can refrain from turning your cameras on. So it's my pleasure now to welcome our host for today, Ross McNally, Chief Executive Officer of Hampshire Chamber of Commerce, who's going to say a few words and introduce our speakers before setting the agenda for today's session. Ross, thank you.
Thanks so much, Mike. Welcome everybody. Good to see you all, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from our speakers and learning so much about the experiences we've been having during these extraordinary times of the lockdown. I'm Ross McNally. I'm the Chief Executive and Executive Chair at Hampshire Chamber of Commerce. I also sit on the board of Enterprise M3 LEP. Today's session is really about learning from the experiences of others, businesses across the whole of the region. And it's good that we'd be able to bring together such fantastic partners in terms of the University of Portsmouth, Solent University and the Chambers of Commerce in order to share these insights and share these learnings. We know that the current situation is quite extraordinary, and every week businesses are being challenged to think of things in new ways and address their particular needs. And I know from operating with the Chamber of Commerce and dealing with hundreds, if not thousands, of businesses across the Hampshire region, that the businesses have really stood up and addressed their concerns and their needs with innovation and with insight. And I think we'll learn today from a lot of those in terms of what's been the general feeling, but also specifically from Brighbulb Design and from Matt, what his experience has been and how he's trodden this very challenging path over the past few months. Today we'll be hearing from our speakers, and it's my great pleasure to work with them and to be able to share the insights. I'll be here later to operate a bit of a Q&A session, but we really want to hear from you. So if you can please get your questions onto the chat, we will ensure that these questions are put to the speakers, and it will enable you to not only share your insights and your perspectives, but also get some feedback and some insights from our well-informed speakers. A little later, we'll be hearing from Matt Jefferey, the CEO of the award-winning Brighbulb Design, and he'll be sharing how he's had to adapt his business to get through this pandemic. But first, we'll be hearing from Gillian Saieva, who's the Associate Professor in Management Practice at Solent Business School, and is also Southeast board member of the Chartered Management Institute. Now, she will be helping us to understand what's happening in this uncertain world. She'll be looking at the wider learning from lockdown, and also showcasing some of the recent CMI Management Transformed research findings. So look forward to seeing you at the Q&A session a little bit later on, and handing over to Gillian now. Welcome and look forward to your presentation. Gillian, over to you.
Thank you very much, Ross, for that lovely introduction. And just while I'm sharing my screen here, I'll just say how lovely it is to be back again at Winning in the Solent region. We had a successful time during the first lockdown, and it's nice to be invited back again to share the next step of the story, really. So can I first just confirm that everyone can see the screen that I've shared? Splendid, thank you. Okay, so obviously I really need no introduction because Ross has done a lovely job of that already. So what I'll do, I'll just move on through that slide. Lovely to be here from Solent University, and lovely to be here also in my capacity as a South East board member of the Chartered Management Institute, and have the opportunity to share the findings of the just launched survey, which is Management Transformed. But before we move into that, just picking up from where we left off last time, and I'm not sure if we've got any people in the session today that did attend the summer sessions of Winning in the Solent region. We looked at the CMI toolkit called the Better Managers Manual, and this was a toolkit that we shared with everyone, reflecting on obviously the challenges that we had as a result of being plunged into the first lockdown and everything that we all experienced. And the themes that came out of that, of course, were flexible working, the crisis management, managing mental health and well-being, and what we've seen was obviously a new employment landscape and an increasing need for new governance being a key priority. So that was used as a discussion piece. We are delighted now to be able to share Management Transformed, Managing in a Marathon Crisis. This is a very recent piece of research that was just launched earlier this month, and we're going to use that today to really just share and showcase what really has been happening, how have we understood it, and what can we learn from it so we can actually plan ahead within this uncertain world. I think what has been most enlightening really as part of the findings of Management Transformed, what the CMI found was that they sort of had gone in assuming the outcome of the research would be one thing, but actually, of course, it was something different. Ultimately, the thoughts were that if the assumption was that if location was sort of key to productivity, they felt that if you work remotely in the workplace or in a hybrid way, that would actually be pivotal to the role of the overall success of your organisation. CMI also went into the research thinking that the rising or the falling demand of an organisation's goods or services would also make a difference in the success of the business. But ultimately, what it showed was it was actually the way that the people in organisations were actually led and managed had the most significant impact on the productivity of the businesses. And I can probably echo a lot of that just anecdotally by what was discussed really in a lot of the earlier sessions. We talked a lot about shock, we talked a lot about the coming to terms with what had happened, almost like managing grief, you know, coming to terms with the loss of life as we actually knew it. And what we did see was a lot of organisations and managers of small businesses and large really having to work hard to make sense of what was happening, and it put them under really a lot of challenge. Really, they had to dig deep to pull on their management skills and abilities to be able to move their businesses forwards. So ultimately, in summary, productivity isn't about where you work, it's about how you are managed, okay? Now, we know it's important to have all of the tools and everything that you need at your fingertips to be able to deliver on your business goals and whatever products your businesses are. And I think we definitely seen that with organizations who maybe weren't on the cloud, organizations who maybe didn't have access to all of their files and be in that position to actually work anywhere, having to really make a bit of a quick scramble to really make that happen. Also, we've seen organizations that maybe their business type was a small business on the high street, and if they hadn't got the ability to actually put that business online, to sell their products online, obviously their productivity was impacted that way as well. So that's something that we can certainly come on to later about how you be more agile so you can actually work forwards. But really, the research findings here have shown that ultimately there is a shift now, as we're in the last quarter of this calendar year, very, very much a shift where less people are actually working in the physical workplace, and we're seeing an increase in that hybrid and virtual approach to working. And what it is forecast is that we will never return to the traditional 5-day week in an office. There is obviously strong evidence to suggest that productivity can still be carried out with effective management where all the tools are in place. So we are seeing greater flexibility being used within our organisations. We have mentioned the well-being word already. Ultimately, the recommendations are that communication is key and looking after your people is key. You will see from the research findings here, just the simple things of being able to reach out, connect with people. It's something that is very, very basic in our motivators and what actually makes us happy as people. So you will see there's a range of skills and attributes here, of course, that you see within the relationship of like business owners and ultimately staff members. But what we are seeing is that recognizing that the people that work in your teams do actually need to hear from you on a regular basis, but need to hear the impact of the decision making or what actually might be happening. So we know that that is something that people have learned how to do better, and ultimately it's refining that more as we move forwards. I come from the HR world, and of course within the HR world, employee engagement is the ultimate goal that organisations are wanting to achieve. If you've got an engaged workforce, you're going to ultimately have high levels of productivity because your employees will stay longer, they will be happier, and you don't have the increasing costs of staff turnover and having to go to find those great people again. So ultimately, if you can create a workplace where your people are happy, that will actually take a lot of the pains away from your business model. But of course, we know that the traditional physical place of work that, of course, a lot of our businesses were built around has been pretty much swept away from under our feet. And as mentioned in the earlier slides, there is this shift for a more hybrid working business model. So it's how then, as a business owner, you can actually work with your business to ensure that everyone that works in your team has got what makes them happy. And then how do you compensate for these elements maybe further down on this scale here? How do you actually compensate for that whenever it's actually out of your control? Ultimately, comfort of a working environment. We know it was very different in lockdown 2.0, where we had rain beating on the window pane in our homes, whereas everyone was sort of trying to work in the sunshine in their back gardens during the first lockdown. And ultimately, this has a big impact on health and well-being, and of course, the happiness of people as they actually carry out the work that they're doing. So these are also important things to be aware of. The anxiety and loneliness piece, of course, is really key. And this links into the earlier recommendation around communicating and actually over communicating to ensure that everyone is in that place. We know that if your business is not back in the physical working space again, it's those informal conversations are at risk of then not happening as easily. We know the comments of the conversations that have in the kitchen or by the coffee machine or by the water butt, etc. Those can be some of the most productive conversations that you have with your team members. So it's how to almost fill that fill that space with how you can have those conversations, but obviously facilitating them to make sure they do happen. In terms of uncertain worlds, I think it's important that we just recognise the context of what else has been going on in this calendar year. We know there has been a lot of change globally. We know we're now in a position where we're going to have some new leaders out in the western part of the world, which is going to make a big shift for obviously how the UK moves forward in a post-Brexit economy. But ultimately, the impact of Black Lives Matter, which of course, the impact of that made its way across the pond. But ultimately, before that, there has been a lot of focus in looking at how business owners can actually harness the best amount of talent for their business and how they can be aware of the importance of managing equality, diversity and inclusion within their teams to ensure that everyone is included, making sure that everyone is engaged and motivated, and ultimately, in times of challenge, that you are taking the best people with you in your business to ultimately make your business productive and successful. Under the inclusivity umbrella, we've also got obviously gender to consider. And I think something that we all reflect on, certainly from lockdown 1.0, the impact of childcare responsibilities on working families. And certainly what the research has shown is that there has been a much higher impact on obviously the female gender. And with that, it's how business owners might be able to really be aware of that, but offer support from a gender point of view, where ultimately what's going to happen is that if your child is sent home from school because someone in their bubble has contracted COVID-19, and you are going to have to homeschool them, obviously in this current pandemic world, ultimately what we're finding is that the responsibility of that does fall on the female more than the male. So there's a wider health and well-being conversation that you need to be aware of if you're potentially having females in your business as well. Obviously, this is not exclusive, of course. We know that there's a lot of men who do support that also. We also know that there's a lot of single parent families, which of course men are at the helm making all of that happen as well. But as business owners, it is really just important that you are just mindful of that, because these are things that didn't really play as important before. And this is just obviously just further endorses what I've said about just the impact of children, the caring responsibilities, but also with the increase of the more mature age groups across our societies, there is much higher responsibility for people that are working in your businesses to have caring responsibilities. And that can be for young people, minors, can also be for majors, with obviously elderly friends, relatives, and so forth. So again, we have to be much more inclusive from a wider society perspective, really, because caring is now a responsibility that businesses do have to be aware of. So then in conclusion, what we're looking at then, how best to plan when it is uncertain. So ultimately around the productivity area, it is encouraged that business owners can monitor and review the working arrangements. It has been cited that where productivity might have increased because of less commuting time eating into the working day, innovation has actually decreased. And I think the innovation decrease is an impact of those impulsive conversations taking place when people are together. It is important that obviously you do have regular communication and well-being check-ins with your staff. That does have a direct link to your productivity. Within any management role, it's so important that the manager and the leader of the business does have a positive presence. They can see that they are there, they are available. We know there's the old cliche, you know, my office door is always open, but if they physically can't see your office because people aren't physically working together, that of course is going to be more difficult. So really just the importance of very regular updates and having that ability where your staff can actually contact you if they need to speak to you at an ad hoc way. In terms of employee engagement, we know that there's a lot of narrative out there around, you know, empowerment and delegation and bringing the young minds and fresh minds together for innovative problem solving and so forth. And I think when it is uncertain, what you have to plan for, you have to plan to be disruptive, you have to plan to be agile, and you have to plan to be in a position where you've actually got a backup plan. This narrative came through very strongly yesterday in Solent Business School's launch session that we had with our Chancellor, Theo Pafitis, obviously a very experienced businessman, and certainly innovation and agility were obviously key elements for success that Theo Pafitis put forward, obviously, to be able to plan and move ahead and adapt in this changing world. Ultimately, it's the challenge for business owners to be the best managers that they can be. So to be in that position to offer support, to really share knowledge and skills, to think about where you can get the best people into your business to move your business forwards. And this certainly endorses the business case then for equality, diversity and inclusion, because everyone's having to dig deep, you're having to think outside of that box when it is uncertain, to think how best can you actually plan ahead. Some interesting words here from Lord Dibben that was shared back in August, with a strap line of, we must resist the temptation to return to business as usual. So I think it's that acceptance now that that has gone. We're moving now into a very different place. Some people argue, well, if it hadn't have been the pandemic, it would have been, you know, rising sea waters and obviously flooding of X amount of hectares and acres or whatever. I think what the pandemic has shown us, it's given us a really good example and a big wake-up call for what other shocks might actually come our way in this coming century. Not sure how many of us might actually be around to see it at the latter part of it, but we know from a wider environmental context, we are probably going to be looking at a few more inches up the scale in terms of temperature average. That's going to have a bigger impact on our climate, and of course the impact that businesses may have thrown upon them as a result of that climate change. We know what's happened over the last 3 to 4 years with flash flooding, for example, up and down the country, and responses that have to be made in part of that. So you can see the narrative here is it's being prepared for shock. We can't control it. We know what might happen. Being resilient, moving away from not obviously being open and vulnerable. And I think a lot of businesses now have built access to cloud so that they can work anywhere. They've also built access to online selling if they didn't have that before, so that their products can still get to the customers. They don't physically have to come over the doorstep of their business. But in terms of the mantra that you are hearing a lot through our government, it's this building back better. And it's almost building back to be more stronger, building strong leadership mindsets in there to lead people forward when we know the times are actually going to be challenging. So as we're saying, amid the upheaval, it has become evident that planning for good management practice is actually a good way to plan ahead for uncertain times. And of course, I'm speaking here in my representative role from the Charter Management Institute, and actually embedding the importance of strong values-driven management practice, because that's cited as being the sustainable way forwards that will have the positive impact on your productivity, your employee well-being, and help you design a workplace that can be more sustainable. Now, I'm delighted to be able to share an opportunity for medium-sized businesses here today. This is a collaboration that both Solent University and University of Portsmouth are involved in, with being small business charter member schools. The Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy have very kindly funded to the tune of just short of 11 million, 2,000 places on workshops that have been running from October of this year, and they will run right through to the end of March next year. These are 8-week short courses that are fully facilitated online, with the output of businesses developing an action plan to drive resilience, productivity and growth. within the business. They are 100% funded. Sadly, social enterprises and charities don't qualify for this funded opportunity from the government. But if you do have a turnover of over 100,000 and employ 5 or more people, you should qualify to be able to come on this 8-week program, where you will have the opportunity to do a bit of a deep dive into your business, really review it against some of these areas that we have discussed in this presentation today, with view then to putting together an action plan for how to actually drive your business forwards. What I will say that has been a really positive impact of these sessions, we've got 60 small businesses nearing the end of this programme already at Solent. It's the ability to come together as a community that has been really positive. The stories that the businesses have shared, the learning from each other, and I think just when times are uncertain, it's nice to actually be in a body of other like-minded people who are running businesses to really share your stories and actually learn from. So that concludes my session. I will hand over now to Matt Jeffery, and as I understand it, we'll take questions at the end. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, Matt, so then you can go ahead and start sharing yours. Ross, is that okay? You're happy? That's what we should be doing, yeah?
That's absolutely perfect, Gillian. And while we wait for Matt to get his slides up, thank you everybody for attending. And I've encouraged you all to put questions into the chat, and I think we've already got one. So please do fire away as you hear from the speakers. Put your questions into the chat, and I'll ensure that they're put forward to the panelists. Thank you, Matt.
Brilliant, thanks for that, Ross and Gillian. Yeah, so I'm Matt Jeffery, CEO of Brighbulb Design, and actually following on from what Gillian said about the leadership program, we did a growth accelerator program with the Solent LEP earlier during the actual pandemic, and that actually proved to be really, really helpful. Helped us look at our business. We did that with BDO as going through our business plan, looking at everything. And so those tools I suggest are really good for small businesses. So I definitely would recommend people taking up that opportunity if you're the right size business to do that. So I'm really here today to give you a perspective from a business in terms of what we've done over the last few months during this pandemic. But before I do that, I'd just like to sort of do a little bit of an introduction about who we are. So we are Brighbulb Design. We're a leading multi-award winning design and digital studio based here on the Isle of Wight at Wootton Bridge. A sunny Isle of Wight, not so sunny today, sadly. We've got an enviable reputation of delivering proven results for many of the South's most successful and aspiring companies. My background is in working with blue chip clients such as Arup, HSBC and Marc Jacobs, especially within the outdoor advertising sector. Me and my wife, stroke co-director Fee, I'm pretty sure wife should come first in that sequence. We've worked in Sydney, Melbourne, New Zealand, London, and now here on the Isle of Wight. And it's the experiences from all of these locations and businesses that we've worked with that we have put into our own business here at Brighbulb. So over the past 6 years or so, we've been growing, doubling year on year, expanding the team. We've now a team of 10 creative individuals, or bright sparks, as I like to call them. We've continued to work with some incredible clients across the country, and we are proud to help these clients on a daily basis. We also continue to work with local businesses in the South, helping them progress their marketing, design and digital presence, and are proud of what we can bring to the table in that respect. So as a very short summary on who I am, and hopefully gives you a bit of an idea of the size of the business, where we're from. Hopefully people can relate to that, people that are on this video call. So of course this year has been pretty much impacted everybody in some way, shape or form. The coronavirus has not exactly helped anything in terms of business. So how have we adapted at Brighbulb to what's been happening? So this is what I'd like to take you through. So first, let me tell you, back in March, and no word of a lie, me and Fee were holding hands as we watched Rishi Sunak tell us how he was going to help businesses with the furlough scheme. At that time, in all honesty, we did not know what to expect from the coming year, but a tear did stream down our faces as we knew that scheme was going to help our staff, quite frankly, and we would be okay. If our staff are going to be okay, then the business would be okay. We believe our staff are our biggest asset. We believe it, to be honest, any business, staff is the biggest asset in any business. And therefore we had faith that if our staff would be okay, that the business would be okay. From there, we didn't sit with our head in the sand. I mean, instead we sort of formulated a plan for what we had to do to keep the business ticking over. We looked at what had started to happen. There were no exhibitions, no handing out leaflets, no business cards exchanged. So we could see that the need for design was going to be less so than we would normally expect in a normal year. So then we looked at the other side of the business in terms of web and digital. And we could see that no shops could open their doors, restaurants were shut, and the high street was struggling. So we put our efforts into figuring out how we can help these businesses hit by hardship with not much to spend, but a need to be online. So we saw that there was a lot of grant funding available for businesses from places like the Solent, Natural Enterprises. There was rural grants around, and there still is a lot of grants and funding around as we speak. Specific funds made available due to this crisis. So we decided to create a scheme that helped businesses with the grant funding process called Adapt UK, a scheme that is actually still running. We helped businesses with creating their story, their need for the grant to pivot their business with a new digital presence. With the grant funder, we knew that there could be money towards e-commerce, adding a potential life-saving revenue stream to a business. This in turn meant that we could be commissioned to do the work to convert businesses' websites to e-commerce stores, which in turn created a revenue stream for us in a time when business was struggling. There was not money being thrown around like left, right, and centre. The grant, I mean, this is a great story, really, in that we helped a lot of businesses get online and be able to sell their wares when they can't open their doors, and a lot of these businesses have benefited massively. One business sold fruit and veg and have never used online for anything other than a basic holding page. Within 3 months of opening their e-commerce store, they had sales of over £25,000 running through that store. They got 50% grant funded. So half of our costs were paid for by rural grant fund. For us, that was huge. We had people asking for ordering systems for takeaways, booking systems for single person shop visits, ordering paint for your own pottery kits for pottery cafes that couldn't have people painting in the cafes in a normal way. So we created some quite complex ordering systems for various uses, and all partly funded by the grant schemes available, which meant that those businesses could get online and have at half the normal cost that it would normally cost. And it also gave us a revenue stream. So it actually worked for everybody. It's that sort of quick thinking that helped us in terms of holding up our design side of the business by creating more digital need. It's about looking for the opportunity in any situation. In times of recession, financial collapse, or coronavirus, there are always opportunities if you look for them. If you can't open your restaurant, start taking takeaways. If you're a small shop and can't adhere to social distancing, let people book online to visit the store one at a time. We also realised as we started to come out of lockdown one, that businesses would be looking to become COVID secure. Within this, everyone needs signage, floor stickers, and various elements for their business so that they can be COVID secure and continue to work in a safe environment. So again, we looked at how we could help with custom graphics and affordable printing. A small boost for a very specific amount of time and a targeted market, but again, a boost to sales and helping the design side of the business with some well-needed pipeline. So it's all about finding the need for the business or consumer and trying to fill that need in a way that works for both parties. Think ahead to what might happen as this next lockdown lifts. What will people need now more than ever? How can you change your business to accommodate them? More recently, we could see that with more digital ads and content creation, plus more need for businesses' website to have really engaging content, that video was coming to the fray, and is another thing that we could look at. So thanks to a post that I noticed on LinkedIn from Portsmouth University about the Santander COVID-19 Small Business Grant, I thought that we could perhaps apply for this grant to pivot our business in the direction of video. So we applied for the grant funding and were successful. This happened simply because I was keeping an eye out on social media, and by chance I came across this post. It is always important to keep up to date with what's on offer, what can help your business and the opportunities that may arise. Santander accepted that grant, and we are looking now at the opportunities to enhance our video service for the business. And I think it's important to note that people shouldn't be worried about asking for help in those situations. I mean, that there are things out there that can be really useful. It can be mentorship, it can be the programs like we've discussed, the Solent programs and the leadership programs. It can be grant funding that can actually add a boost to a certain element of your business. And I think that's really important, to not be scared or too proud to say, actually, I could do a bit of help here or a bit of help there, or I need some advice. So what else did we look at? Another sort of pointer, I suppose, that we took away from the situation is we looked at our staff and their current job roles and thought, how can we adapt what they are doing to help generate more work? If they have less to do in one area of the business, such as the design side, then what could they be doing in another area? So one of our designers, Vicky, we moved into an updated job role of social media management. She was able to design posts very easily, being a designer, as she had all those skills, but just needed to learn about copywriting and creating engaging content. So we gave her the time to create our social calendars, schedule posts and design posts, with a plan for her to take on more of these jobs, potentially for our clients in the future. After months of training, she is now great at creating engaging posts and social marketing plans for businesses. And this helps us in that we have since been contacted by businesses to help them with their social media. Again, another revenue stream that we had not really taken as full advantage of in the past, but the current situation made us look at ourselves and say, yes, we can do this. We've got the skills. We just need to train or adapt that particular position. And now we've got an extra bow to our string to our bow. My next point is this, and in times of crisis, you need to prepare for a loss and prepare for how you will recover from that loss. If you're prepared to potentially lose money, but have the foresight to put credit in place or some sort of funding or something available to you for your recovery plan, then you go into that loss knowing that you have at least the light and hope at the end of the tunnel. For our business, in December is always a difficult month for us. All our staff are on holiday for the last 2 weeks of the month, so you imagine having 8 to 10 members of staff just disappearing for the last 2 weeks of the month. It's not exactly very helpful in terms of productivity. Most of our Christmas campaigns are already live by the beginning of December. And businesses tend to relax in the winter break, not committing until after Christmas to a big website redesign or new marketing campaign until they get new budgets in place. So we are always prepared to have a bad December. In times like these, that could be even worse than usual. If you don't have a loss, then that's great, pat on the back all round. If you do have loss, then we know we have the money, the funds, the credit in place, are in a good position whilst we recover and plan to hit the ground running in early January. So another point that I'd like to just touch on, and it's kind of the last thing I'd touch on here today, is another thing that we did during lockdown 1, which has helped us and has helped many others actually in this uncertain time, and that is to create an information booklet that Fee put together on mental health. During just before lockdown, actually, Fee became, my wife and co-director, became a mental health first aider, and if ever there was an opportunity to use her new skills, it was during lockdown 1. She created a document on what people and businesses can do to help their mental health. The leaflet was actually so successful in helping people to actually visit Isle of Wight have recently commissioned us to do a new one for the tourism and hospitality sector here on the island, who have obviously suffered massively through the pandemic. It is great that it's helped so many businesses. It's also important it's helped all of our staff, which have gained some good tips and insightful on what mental health is all about. During lockdown 1, we had evenings where the team got together on Zoom, played games remotely, and sent our staff goodie parcels to let them know that we were thinking of them. This all helps you get through the situation together as a team. We had a member of staff who lived in a flat on their own, no garden, was basically told to stay in for 4 months, not even allowed to see their family. And we noticed that he was quite frankly fed up with the situation. And we took note and tried to do what we could to help through those, online sessions and chats and just talking and communication. It's important that you take note of your staff and their feelings and do whatever you can, remembering that, yes, you are the owner of the business, and yes, the weight of the world may seem to be upon you, but it's your staff that hold that business up on a daily basis. They have families, they have money troubles, they have personal issues. Help your staff, and the reward will be great in what they think of you and how they support your business going forward. I'm proud of our team. They've helped Brighbulb plan, adapt and grow certainly in this uncertain time. So just a summary of tips from me that I hope will help everybody here today. Number 1, look for the opportunities for your business. How can you adapt a service to accommodate to the new norm? 2, see what grants are available for your business. You may be surprised at what's actually available to you once you look into that a bit further. Think how you can change employees' job roles to become more productive or add a new service. Prepare for a loss. Make sure you have credit available in the business in case the worst happens. And lastly, look after your staff's mental health. They are your most important assets and are the ones most likely to help you recover from the situation. So that's it from me. Hopefully that's been informative and useful, and useful tips for other small businesses and who can hopefully relate to what I'm talking through. But I will now pass it back to Ross, I believe. And that's...
Thanks very much, Matt. That's absolutely brilliant insights from the, if you like, the front line of businesses, particularly a small business managing with all of the issues. If I could invite Gillian, please, and Matt, then I think we're moving into the Q&A session. And as I said before, I've got the chat open, and I'd be delighted if you could put your questions to Matt and Gillian, and I'll ensure that they're asked. I do have a few other questions available as well, so I'm sure that we will keep chatting for the next 25 minutes or so. But please do put your specific questions relating to your specific experiences and businesses into the chat, and I'll pick them up. So let's kick off. Firstly, Liam has asked a question, and I think we'll hear from both. It says, if home working and hybrid virtual working continues post-COVID, how can businesses adapt to lower commuter footfall? And that's obviously a very important key thing for many businesses who have placed their businesses in areas that rely on commuter footfall. But I think it probably goes wider than that. So let's kick off. Gillian, what do you think?
Yes, Ross, thank you. And thank you, Liam, for such a good question to get us going this morning. So I think the response to this, we've had really good examples shared with what Matt Jeffery has shared and how his business has been able to pivot in the response to the opportunities and demands that have came as a result of COVID. Who would have thought he would have been printing out lots of circular stand here stickers to go out up and down the country? And I think really from that comes a really good example of how businesses have to look broader and wider. So ultimately, if there is less footfall on the high street and your business model was built around your customers mostly coming from that place, well, it's looking then at, okay, what other customers can you attract, or how else can you service that group of customer, or ultimately, what other routes can your business go down? So I think it's a time to really reflect, dig deep, think outside the box, to think, right, well, if those customers aren't here, what other customers can I go after? Because there will be customers. It's maybe you think about a different product line or something like that that you bring on to suit the new demands or the new behaviors of people.
Indeed, I think that pivoting of businesses is extremely important. Matt, you seem to have done that very well indeed, and on behalf of your clients as well. How would you feel you could help Liam if he had come to you with this particular challenge?
I think, yeah, thanks, Ross. I think, and it's about looking at your digital presence in this current situation. I think you've got to remember now that everybody is online, everybody's looking to online, and there is a massive amount of those people online. And I think you need to sort of look at your business and think, okay, if I'm a shop, I can't get the people, there's not enough people in the street. How can I get some online? Can I do some advertising? Can I use Google? We actually give you some free advertising at times. Facebook do as well at different times. Can you use these tools, these social tools, to get your message out there instead? So it's about looking at a new way of doing things and not the traditional, looking at digital and how that can push your business forward and how you can get those commuters through your website instead of through the door as such.
Thanks, that's brilliant. And as if by magic, luckily we've got some more questions coming in, so I'll go straight to those. Craig Willis is saying, trying to pivot your business and target a different customer can be time consuming. Given how limited resources are, what tips do you have for making this easier and quicker? I'll start with Matt and then we'll go on to Gillian. Matt.
I don't know if it's ever easy or quick to get to the end result you're looking for. For us, I mean, I work stupid hours a lot of the time, to be fair, but I am always looking out for what's available. I mean, an easy thing to do is simply to go on social media and see what the Solent are putting out, see what Natural Enterprise are putting out, because I mean, they're absolutely incredible what the stuff that's being put out on their posts on LinkedIn and Facebook. Same with Portsmouth Uni. All of that stuff is easy to do. It's easy to look at. It may take a little bit of time then to go into that and look to see what resources are available to you and what grants are. But I mean, I've put grants in for people that are literally an A4 piece of paper. So some of this stuff is not difficult. It's just knowing about your business and what you've already got within your business. So it may be you have to give your financials over or a little bit more information. But like I say, some of these grants are literally an A4 piece of paper to put your story across. And so it's really just taking the time to look at what's out there, what people are offering. Go on the Solent website. And see what's around and applying for that, which can sometimes be quite a quick process.
Indeed, absolutely. And of course, bounce back loans and reinvesting in your business, all of these things have helped. Gillian, have you got any steer for Craig on this?
Yeah, I think ultimately, building on what Matt has said, it can be time consuming. Sadly, there is no resting on your laurels here. It's the strongest of the species will survive, I'm afraid, and it's where you will have to push yourself out of your comfort zone here. I think in terms of you may have limited resources, you may have limited knowledge as to what different opportunities may be. And this is where it's really important to be in a position where you're always keeping yourself one step ahead of the game. And by keeping yourself one step ahead of the game, this might be what you're doing yourself as a business owner in terms of your own personal development, in your own knowledge piece. How much time are you spending watching what your competitors are doing? How much time are you spending seeing what the sort of incoming trends are, looking at what's happening in the US, because generally it does come further east. But it's horizon scanning all of the time to see what's happening. So you do have to be one step ahead, so that you're not always reactive. Yes, it is going to be time consuming, but if you change your behaviors so that every day you're doing a little bit of working on your business, and that added value to both yourself in terms of your knowledge and what you're understanding that the markets are within your industry, sub-industries, branch industries, etc., it means that you can turn your hand to innovation and pivoting a lot easier. It's also the company that you keep. How do you spend your time? What sort of people are you networking with? So it's looking at your network. So again, what people can you sort of learn from in a very easy way that you're just constantly thinking, oh, wow, well, I actually wouldn't have thought of that, or that's really useful. So if you take that one bit of knowledge and connect it with the other, boom, you might just have a new opportunity to trial. So it's just that constant refreshing of yourself, and that will then help refresh your business.
I think that's right. A little bit of a plug for the Chamber of Commerce here. I think that was one of the reasons that we did the Chamber of Solutions events throughout the whole period, because it's about building your community of practice that can really help you as a business. Gillian, Stephanie's asked a very interesting question, and I noted it when you were doing your presentation, this disparity with regard to home working, and she's picked up on a particular point regarding childcare. So she says, how does flexibility for childcare responsibilities work in practice? How is flexibility extended without creating tension between staff members without children? And is there a way of supporting staff with children and childcare responsibilities that doesn't include asking staff to make up hours at night or weekends, or take a salary cut, or use up holiday? She gets this type of question quite a lot in her role. So that is part of that disparity piece. Home working has created new challenges.
Yes, it has. I mean, I'm not aware of what Stephanie's business model is that she works in, and what her role supports. Ultimately, if it is a business practice that can have staff work from home, that of course will then make the childcare element a lot easier, where of course working parents can of course multitask if they can carry out their work responsibilities at home while the children are there in situ. It of course is a lot more challenging if the actual business model and the work role. Oh, here we've got a local authority in the economic growth team and deal with businesses on a daily basis. So it's looking as to whether that actual job role can be carried out remotely. And it's then looking in order to have that ability for your female staff, and I see the notice, so they don't have to make up hours at night and weekends, or they don't have to take a salary cut. So that of course is what you want to avoid. So I think it's looking at your job roles and looking at how those job roles can actually be executed, looking at the practices within your business as well, how all of your practices are executed. So it's having inclusive operating practices. So rather than having the board meeting on a Monday at lunchtime back around the traditional physical board table and having that aspiration for everyone to be there physically, it's having flexible practices and flexible meeting practices so that remote team members can still take part in the meeting. And that a lot of what was learned and a lot of that capability that was gained during lockdown 1.0 still extends. And this is where we are seeing a lot of crossover with this hybrid model, so that those individuals can still avail of their childcare responsibilities if they are ad hoc, and and it means they can still do their work role as well within the normal working hours, so it's not then consistently pushed through into evenings and weekends, etc. And of course, this might be parallel also for caring responsibilities at the upper age spectrum also. You know, elderly people put into hospital because of COVID, and of course, they can't stay in hospital once they're better because they need the beds back. And, you know, they can't necessarily go into other social care systems. So there is increasingly a responsibility during the pandemic for family members to then look after, you know, people that and their loved ones that do then have to come back home.
Absolutely, Gillian.
So it's that additional caring responsibility. It isn't just children.
Quite right, absolutely. And I think one would imagine that the last year has been a social experiment in our teams being a village and actually working with each other to resolve these issues. But I know just how difficult that can be. Matt, you seem to have a very good team working with you. Have you had these challenges, and have you found innovative ways of dealing with these matters?
Me and Fee have had these challenges, me and my wife, in terms of she's part of the business. We obviously lockdown 1, the kids were at home, and her trying to continue to work was just very, very difficult. So that ended quite quickly, but it's a difficult one, because if you say I want to basically do have less hours, I want to, you know, I need to look after my kids, which is all good, but at the time would need to be made up somewhere, presumably, to say I don't want to take out a holiday, I don't want a salary cut, I don't want to make up the time, is not, I don't know how you would get around that other than doing agile working, making up the time as and when they can type of thing. That's how we deal with it. We've got Adam, who he picks up his kids on a Friday afternoon, so that came about, nothing to do with COVID actually, but he makes up the time in the evenings on Wednesdays or Thursdays or whenever. We're not really bothered about what day it is, but he just makes up that time and just lets us know on our little digital timer system that he's done those hours. So I think you can be flexible. I think it's difficult to say we basically want to do less hours but still get paid the same amount, not make up any time, not have it taken out a holiday. That's a bit more difficult to figure out how you would do that personally.
I think that's right. I think it probably is shaped around the individual needs and the individual requirements, isn't it? But you're absolutely right. There is this equality piece that comes into play in the workplace that needs to be addressed. Mike, on a similar subject or related subject, who did you involve in your business when drawing up your lockdown plans? We'll call them that. And what were their insights, do you feel, as you started to develop and shape these things?
We actually got together as directors, me, Fee, and Alan, who's my dad, who were a family-run business, and we sort of looked at what we needed to do and shape those plans between us, really. We did involve the staff as well in terms of coming up with ideas. What can we be doing to fight against this situation? What can we be putting out there? What creative campaigns can we put together? I think it's important to involve the staff in terms of some of those decisions, and then feedback to them how that's gone or what we've done, and so that they can be really a part of that business. Because I think having your staff wanting to give you these ideas, and not every idea will be used, but you know, having them to be involved in that process makes them feel more of a part of that business, and therefore more attached to it and where it goes and its growth. And I think having everybody together to try and create what's, you know, different ideas, and then for the directors to go, okay, we'll do this, this, and this, and then for us to feedback to them and say, look, this worked, or that didn't work, or it was a good effort, or this went really well. It is great for them, and also a little bit of a boost for them to go, oh, do you know, my idea was used, or and such. So we kind of between the whole team and then specifically on the top tier, trying to create some sort of plan to make sure that we were safe and could continue onwards, and the business would be able to progress.
Indeed, It's all about, I mean, we have heard a lot from businesses that it's really helped to bond and create a new culture in some of these organizations as a result.
Yeah.
So there's always some good things that come out of these challenges, these moments, I suppose, of crisis that we address. And it sounds like that's happened in your business very much.
Definitely. When we had to be fair, we've got an incredible team, and we're pretty a tight knit team. To be fair, we all support each other on different projects. If one person's out, someone else will pick up the project. We're constantly chatting. We have Messenger and stuff as well. On Facebook, we have our sort of fun chat as well. So there's constantly talking, communication back and forth. So we're pretty lucky in that respect anyhow, but even more so within an environment that we're currently working with, to have that support and know that your team are there for you is massive.
Thank you, Matt. Gillian, on a slightly related subject, when looking at the research and the work that you've been looking at, particularly from a broader perspective, do you think that businesses, really there was a lot of development on the hoof as far as businesses were concerned through innovation, or did businesses address everything in a more planned and formal way? What do you think the balance was from your perspective?
So I believe that there was a lot of quick reactive responses, which of course you get when you are under pressure. It's that sort of fight or flight mode. And I think we've seen some excellent innovative responses where people were put out of the comfort zone and they had to really think, right, what am I going to do? People were put under pressure to make decisions that they never thought they would have had to have made. And what that has done for a lot of people is actually show them what they are capable of doing. It's maybe made them think outside of boundaries that they would never have considered before. And having those practices are actually very good renewal and enhancement practices. I think as we've experienced now lockdown 2.0, and of course we have to understand the uncertainty is still going to continue. While there may be bright lights shining now at the end of the tunnel with obviously a vaccine, we know that there is still going to be an element of disruption. I think what we're seeing now is maybe businesses reflecting on, okay, we've maybe had to fail fast in some of the initiatives that we looked at, or we've maybe made a quick decision and we've put in short-term initiatives that have maybe acted as bridging initiatives, where maybe they've had maybe a quick fix to put their business online with a very quick sort of website and shopping cart back end built onto it. Maybe they want to do a full overhaul of their website now. Maybe they want to think about where their brand actually sits moving forwards, and maybe new identities that they want to bring into their branding as a result of what they have exposed themselves to during the last 6 months. And also, I think it's been a period of renewal for a lot of businesses and repositioning of their business strategy, really, on the back of maybe having to close off previous sales lines and so forth, where of course if that one market has dried up but then new opportunities arise, it's then realigning themselves for new opportunities in a more sort of resilient way as well.
Very good. I think one of the key issues, Gillian, is also around productivity. Do you think as a result of these changes, this is going to help to enhance, or is it going to place Britain further behind the productivity curve? What do you think will happen?
Yeah, so I think the productivity curve's a bit up and down, really. I suppose if we were going to try and draw a straight line across all of those curves, what would it actually look like? Would it be straight? Would it be up or down? I mean, there has been so many business industries that have been significantly hit, and I think the hospitality industry, for example, has been very, very severely hit. So of course their productivity of course has gone down if they've had to close their doors. So they're in obviously that more challenging position with very strong rules when of course they are in that productive phase. But I think aside of obviously the hospitality industry, I think it's looking at the other businesses and where they can then find a niche for their products, and how productivity can actually be supported. So while I think it may be slow, we know that a lot of organisations have had to lay off staff as they've had to contract where their business model has understandably slowing down. There's a lot of consolidation of cost bases going on at the moment across all sectors, and as a result of that happening, of course, the ultimate economic growth will be in decline. But I think what we are seeing is where we're seeing opportunities within businesses and new jobs, actually. I mean, for all of the job losses that are happening up and down the country at the moment, there are still a lot of new jobs being created and a lot of businesses employing new people. It's interesting when you sort of look at a cross-section of all of the skill sets. Digital is a key skill that sits within that, and the ability to analyze data as well, being obviously a focused part of that. I think to be productive, businesses are having to be on a digital platform to support what they're doing. That's the only way that they can be resilient against this sort of disruption and shock that we've experienced because of COVID. But also around that, it's being really focused on their performance metrics for productivity. So it's been in that position to be constantly reviewing where they're at from a cash flow point of view, and it's on that weekly basis, just being really on it and trying to be really future focused.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of change that's happening right now under the radar. We'll see that coming through. There's a question that's come in from Martin, which is very close to my heart as a chief executive of a Chamber of Commerce, but I won't direct it to myself. Matt, business networking via the Chamber of Commerce, there are other networking organisations, and independent business groups is an important part of sales for a lot of businesses. All this physicality has stopped throughout 2020 and has continued via Zoom. But many businesses find that online networking is far less profitable than when businesses can physically meet, as online is far less personal. Do you think online networking will become the norm from now on?
Hi, Martin. Actually, Martin's a fellow graphic designer from the island, so it's good to see you on the call. Yeah, I mean, I've seen Martin at many networking events here on the island previously, and sadly over 2020, we haven't really seen each other, but it is becoming a thing. The Zoom thing is great. It was a good sort of replacement for when nothing else could happen. I don't think it will be like this forever. I think there will be eventually, once things calm down, people face-to-face meetings again. There will be bubbles potentially, and eventually have these bigger events. Hopefully can't go on forever. I think you're right, it is more difficult to gain profit out of the Zoom meetings because people don't necessarily follow up or stuff. But what I sort of think of it as is online networking. If you look at LinkedIn, is kind of everything you do on there is online networking. It is actually a networking platform. So maybe following up people on LinkedIn and doing that after calls, and maybe just dropping a note to say, oh, that was interesting what you said, if there's a speaker, and to try and make those connections in a digital way, is a way to do it, and a way we should be doing it even at the same time as having real networking events. I think that will help in terms of engaging with people on those platforms. It is networking, but via a social way. I do think networking will be back. I certainly hope so for the chambers and all the other independent business groups around, because you can't really beat a face-to-face chat, a cup of tea and a biscuit, and passing over the business cards. And obviously for our business and yours, Martin, good. That's great for us because people need to create the marketing materials that they give out to people and stuff. So I truly hope that it won't be ongoing, and as much as Zoom is great, it can't replace face-to-face.
Well, I think I fully agree with that. I think a blend is probably the future. Mike, Matt, so what impact did you experience with external partners and supply chain relationships? Has there been a change, do you think, during the lockdown in the way that those relationships have been ongoing? Partly because they've been also had to be online, but also because probably some tough decisions have had to be made, I suspect.
Well, we've seen some suppliers go out of business, sadly, in terms of some print suppliers, but we've got some pretty strong relationships with it's mainly print really related suppliers, and they've been actually, a lot of those have been incredibly busy. They've actually been doing, like I said, some of the sort of social distancing stuff that you've seen, they've had to do that for businesses across the whole country, you know, so a lot of that stuff's going out. And there also was a time when lockdown 1 ended where everybody started to promote again and advertise and do outdoor advertising and stuff. So that's certainly improved. We have other, certainly we work quite heavily in the taxi advertising industry. That was hit incredibly badly with COVID, because people weren't going out, there was no one in taxis, so people weren't advertising on taxis because nothing could be seen. So those businesses certainly had to adapt incredibly, really cleverly actually, some of the ways they adapted by putting out information about taxis being the safest form of transport, because there's a passenger compartment which is away from the driver, having all of the COVID stuff in there as well, in terms of stuff for your hands, sanitizers and stuff. And so they kind of tried to adapt in that way, but certainly the advertising spend that would normally have been spent with those guys was definitely a lot less. And so we'd see a lot of those suppliers adapting to different tactics to try and maneuver their way through the pandemic. But yeah, in whole, certainly in terms of print, a lot of those suppliers have done really well.
Indeed. We're gradually moving towards the close at 15:15. But I have a question really for both of you. We focused on a lot of the things that have succeeded and a lot of the changes that I think are bringing positive impact actually to let's say 2021 and beyond. But if we think about not everything has been the greatest of success. If we'd had our time again, or if businesses had had their time again, the question is, what would we have done differently? Now that's quite a tough one. So I'll let Matt have some thinking about that. Gillian, I'm going to chuck that one at you to start with. What would we have done differently, do you think, that might have created an even more positive impact?
Yeah, I would probably imagine there's a lot of businesses out there that said that they would have converted to online a lot quicker, because I think when we first went into lockdown, none of us really knew what was happening, and we thought it was maybe only going to be for a month or something like that. And then of course the graphs still just kept rising, didn't they? And it went on probably for a lot longer than what we initially thought. And I know there were some businesses that sort of thought, okay, I'll take a dip in my loss of earnings because it will then bounce back. You know, this is maybe only going to be just for a short term. But I think now businesses are realizing, no, this is a long-term disruption, which will mean a lot more of a cultural shift. So probably where some businesses were maybe sort of biding their time, still getting their head around it all, wondering what would be, and held back. If they were to go into it straight again, I would imagine a lot of them would be a lot more focused on getting digital strategies in place and harnessing a new customer and facilitating a sales route for their existing customers a lot faster.
Thank you, Gillian. I think that's exactly the answer Matt would like to hear as well. What do you think businesses maybe should have done differently or a bit more urgently, Matt?
I was going to say Gillian stole my answer. I think when we went into this initially, I think a lot of people weren't really concerned. They didn't think it would be what it was. Obviously, planning slightly more ahead would have been a good idea, but certainly digital is where we've seen people flourish. I mean, it's like I said about the fruit and veg retailer, they had never looked at all at doing digital stuff. They were a wholesaler. They did it in a traditional way. They did have a holding page. It was a really old, about 20-year-old holding page, and that was about it. They hit this situation and said, okay, no one can come to us, nothing's open, we need to sell to the public instead of selling to restaurants because nothing's open. What can you do? And we're through this grant system as well. we turned around an e-commerce store in a couple of weeks for them, and like I say, they've now taken, well, within the first 3 months they took £25,000 through that e-commerce store. So that part of the business is suddenly come out of nowhere, and they're making a good revenue stream out of that. And that is the key to I think what people should have done slightly differently is to actually I mean, for us, we've been banging on about digital for years, but you know, it's hard to, it's only now that people go, oh, hang about, yeah, no, they're right about that. We really should get a store or have some sort of presence or do something on social media or do some advertising on Google ads or Facebook ads, because that is really, really where people struggled. And in that first, I mean, believe me, in that first lockdown, we were so busy. We had the best, we had actually the best 3 months in terms of sales and profits we've ever had, because we had so many websites coming, people asking us for websites and different things. It was just crazy. So hopefully, and now in lockdown too, I've seen that people have got that and they're ready for it, which has been good to see.
Thank you very much, Matt. Absolutely. So I think the message has been, it's not just about Zoom. It's about the acceleration of digital in all its formats, and we've seen that throughout the whole of whatever sectors, very many different sectors that maybe they didn't think could have the impact on their business, and it's proven to have it. So well done, businesses. Well done for those levels of innovation. Matt and Gillian, thank you so much for your contributions and for your grilling. It's been really very enjoyable, and I think the insights that we've learned through your presentations, through the Q&A, have been really helpful for businesses. And I'd just like to thank everybody for joining us today, and just give a little bit of a mention that we have another one of these sessions taking place on the 3rd of December. That's Thursday, the 3rd of December at 10 a.m. And that is Managing People Through Change. So please do join us, and please let everybody that you know about the webinar as well to come on board, because I think these things are proving extremely useful and extremely helpful at these challenging times. Obviously, this has been recorded, so we'll be sending this out to you, and please do take 2 minutes to complete the survey when we do contact you with that. And if you have any further questions, please do get in touch with Solent. I think there's an email address, engagement@solent.ac.uk, and that will be very helpful should you have any questions that we haven't been able to get round to answer today. I'm Ross McNally. I've been delighted to be able to work with you and share the insights that we've learned of today, and look forward to seeing you on the 3rd of December. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending, and see you again soon. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.